Welcome back to Morgan's video blog, Morgan's online blog in video format. Today I'm here to share with you Gender 401, a World Fantasy Con panel. So I recognize that as a cisgendered female, I can listen and do my best to promote understanding and inclusion, but I am by no means an expert. If I've misrepresented anything in this panel write-up, please do not hesitate to call me out on it. Also, I recognize that my notes are aimed more for the cis audience, in part because I know that I am the wrong person to explain gender identity to anyone who isn't cis. But hopefully the book suggestions are at least helpful for everyone. For those who aren't familiar with Gender 101, a transgendered individual has determined that the gender they were assigned at birth does not match their personal identity. A cisgendered individual has determined that the gender they were assigned at birth does match their personal identity. A non-binary or enby person can run the gamut. Some mixed-gendered expressions, both male and female as we'd call them, some alternate gendered expressions based on how they're feeling on a particular day. These people are also said to be gender fluid. And there are some non-binary individuals who just avoid gendered expressions altogether. Also, there are intersex individuals who at birth were not easily assigned a single gender. So now that you're familiar with the cornucopia of gender identities and backgrounds, let's get back to writing and figuring out how to use this knowledge to enhance our work. So, ways that genre fiction can improve. Basically, it all boils down to remembering that cisgendered people aren't the only ones out there, and including all kinds in our stories. So, one pet peeve was making sure the existence of trans men isn't completely ignored when revisiting the trope, what if men could get pregnant? Another way genre writing can improve is thinking through the world. There are plenty of stories about gendered magic or cities that ignore where trans people or non-binary people would live. And also, we need to start avoiding Scooby-Doo style reveals where the bad guy was transgendered or just dressed up as the opposite sex to avoid suspicion. Tip: you can acknowledge and then add a couple details about how those cases work. You don't have to make your story about gender identity. You just have to let people outside the binary exist in your world. Tip 2, for gendered magic, you have to decide how to handle it. It can be influenced by whether the magic is assigned at birth or something that happens when you hit puberty or some sort of ritual. And if someone changes their identity of their gender when they get older, does their magic change with them? Who knows? You've got to figure it out. So how do you decide what's best without playing into stereotypes? And if you're trapped in the gender binary yourself, how can you make sure you've properly portrayed these characters? Well, the best way to figure out how to handle non-cisgendered characters is to read stories written by non-cisgendered writers. So here's a list the panelists mention of genre writers who handle gender well. Some are inside the cis-binary and some are outside. Austin Chant, J.Y. Yang, Akwaeke Emezi, Charlie Jane Anders, Ursula Le Guin, and of course Octavia Butler. For collections of stories, there's the Transcendent Anthology, edited by Cam Sparra, who was one of the panelists. And there was a shout out to Le Guin, of course, for first introducing genre writers to gender exploration. Another place to explore is the Tiptree Awards. Begun in 1991, it started off just giving credit for having a woman as a character in a sci-fi fantasy novel. But each year, the bar raises. It's about promoting gender in genre fiction. So according to Ellen Klages, a motherboard member of the Tiptree Awards for over 20 years, If a bar fight doesn't break out when the winner is announced, clearly the novel selected wasn't cutting edge enough and shouldn't have won. I think these are yelling bar matches, not fist fights, but what do I know? So, what would our panelists like to see? Middle-aged and older women who aren't witches. More stories that start off beyond the pale to start to normalize their existence. Diversity and representation. Don't make non-gendered binary people either perfect or the villain. If you have one person outside the gender binary in your story, how you represent them will be a huge focus. If you have many and multitudes of roles, it goes a long way towards fighting the urge to stereotype them or put them in a box. Speaking, they'd also like to see more writing outside the box. So think about this. If gender is so enigmatic now, how diverse could the real future or your fantasy worlds be? Why even stick to gender binaries in fantasy? One can find inspiration from the common garden slug for new ways of handling gender identity. However, tip 3, if everything in your world is different, it's going to be hard for your readers to follow. They're going to need a handhold of familiarity. Just remember that different audiences will need different handholds. What alienates some readers will allow you to reach others. Decide who your story is really for. Which brings us to tip 4. Well, I guess this one's more of a warning. These worlds can be very difficult to get the balance right, to bring the reader into a strange new world without losing them. It takes a lot of skill to do something experimental successfully. And that's where the panel ended. Hopefully, if you weren't already exposed to these concepts, you've got a better grasp on ways to fill your world with gender diversity. If you were already familiar with them, I hope you found something of value from this write-up. Go out and remember to include transgendered and non-binary people when filling your worlds. Plus, join the fight against gendered stereotypes and cisgendered assumptions. Thank you for watching. Tune in again next week for more writing tips and writerly musings. And as always, feel free to subscribe or leave your comments below. See you again. Bye-bye.